Alright guys, this is going to be part 5 in the assembly portion of our custom PC building guide. And here we're going to be showing you guys how to attach the motherboard basically to the power source, which is going to be your power supply, and all the connections that go along with it.
Alright guys, so basically there's two main connections that attach to the motherboard from the power supply, and that is going to be your 24-pin main motherboard power connector, which is usually on this side right here, right next to the RAM sockets. And then there's going to be an 8-pin CPU one, which is right here, and this is essential. A lot of times you might forget to do this one, and then your computer won't start and you'll think something's wrong. You have to have both of these powers connected. This one doesn't power everything.
Okay, so while our motherboard has an 8-pin, some motherboards have a 4-pin, and on rare occasions don't have any at all. But you always want to check to make sure you have it plugged in. And of course, the high-end motherboards have, of course, two 8-pins.
Yep.
For serious power stuff. And of course, a 24-pin may also be a 20-pin.
And that is why a lot of power supply manufacturers will include something like this, where you can actually break off 4 at the end and then just use the 20 standard. So for this one, you just want to take the fattest connector, which is obviously this one, and then there's a latch on it, which latches onto this little notch on the side, and then just make sure those are lined up, and just stick it on just like that.
Keep in mind that we're doing this outside of the case, so make sure you have everything set up properly.
Alright, now the 8-pin power connector, same thing. This is also designed to work with 4 pins. These two can actually come apart. And there's latches on it just like that, and there's a latch on this side of the connector. So we're just going to stick this on top right here. And that's on there. And then lastly, because we installed our graphics card, we're going to want to plug this in too. And we have our 6-pin PCIe connector. If your power supply does not have one of these, you probably want to do some research to make sure that it can support your graphics card, because we don't exactly recommend using the Molex to 6-pin PCIe adapters, because if the power supply doesn't have one of these, it probably isn't meant to drive something this power hungry. So same thing with the latches, just stick it on like that.
And of course, the graphics card is going to be where the connections vary a lot. Some high-end graphics cards, such as the 590, are going to have 2 8-pin connectors, while something like our 9800 here is only going to require 1 small PCIe 6-pin connector.
Yeah, also on a similar note, if the power supply, the graphics card power connectors are on the side facing outward, it gives you more room between your card and your hard drive bays. And keep in mind that if they are coming out like this card is, then you're going to have to take off like about 1 inch here to actually get the plug in.
Yes, so maybe even before you buy your parts, you want to measure just to make sure everything's going to fit in.
Yeah, and oh yeah, guys, make sure your power supply is off when you're plugging all these parts in. A lot of them are going to have a light on the back, but you can always go by the switch, which has a 0 and a 1, and the 0 is off and the 1 is on.
Okay, so now we're going to be showing you guys how to add on some other connections. Specifically in this case, we're going to be showing you guys how to do Max has in there, push-pull fan setup for a heatsink. Of course, this is very enthusiast, and we're doing it specifically because we have the Tech Mega Halum, and we're going to need all the cooling that we can get.
Alright guys, so we're going to be installing our fans now, as this sort of ties into the power connections. And these that we're using are Thermalright. They're pretty cheap fans, but I've used them before and they move a pretty good amount of air for the noise level. And it's also nice to have sort of low RPM fans, because when you're doing a push-pull system, that's still going to draw tons of air through, but you're going to save yourself a lot of the noise. And if you guys are having a lot of fans in your case, you can buy something like this, which is a 1 3-pin band power, and it branches off into 4 connections. And you can get this for like $3 at performancepcs.com, where I got mine. It's a great site, and they have tons of little obscure accessories like this that can really help you out in your build. But for this one, we're actually going to be using 2 connections that are on the motherboard. And if you can see closely, there are these little things sort of spread out on motherboards, and it's just a 3-pin power connector, and the fan power cable just sticks right in there like that. So when we're installing the push-pull system, you want to make sure that where the wire comes out is in a nice location for you. So we're going to stick it right here just so it's out of the way at the bottom.
Also make sure that you check the direction of airflow on your fans. This is usually indicated by an arrow kind of molded into the plastic.
Yeah, and a lot of times you can just go by the logo and whether the blades are facing down or not. The logo is usually on the intake side, and the motor with these crossbars is usually mounted on the outtake.
Yeah, so as you see here, we're going to basically be exhausting the air outside of the case, which is indicated by the back of the motherboard.
Alright, so for installing this, you just get your clip right here, stick it in that slot, and then it fits right into where a screw would be going. And these may look flimsy, but it's very strange how they hold fans very securely in place. Alright, so there's one. And then for our second one, let's put the cord in the right place, so down on this side. And this is kind of a tight fit because of this heatsink right here, but that's just some plastic. That's fine. It's perfect, just like that. Alright.
But again, keep in mind that you want to note any sort of space discrepancies that you might have. For example, in some cases your heatsink might even block your RAM, and that's definitely not a thing you want, so always be sure to do your research beforehand.
Alright guys, so those are on. Both of them are facing the same way, so they're both blowing air that way. And it's very sturdy. And now we're just going to plug these in. So this power connector, it's just a 3-pin. You can see those little sort of rails that correspond to this plastic thing that sticks up. So you just stick that on there.
Some heatsinks might have 4 pins, and that extra pin is just for motherboard fan control, but the majority of heatsinks will just have a nice simple 3-pin connector.
Yeah, and on the other side right here, there's another lead. I'm going to attempt to stick this one in without pliers.
You got this, Max?
Yep, there we go. Alright, so that's in there nice, and we're ready to try to test this out and see how it posts.
Alright, so that's the end of our motherboard connections video. Remember, this is done outside the case. We recommend it because if you do come across any problems, it's a lot easier to just take some stuff out and diagnose outside of the case rather than when your motherboard's already inside of your case.
Yeah, one more thing I want to mention to you guys really quick. I came across this problem maybe about a couple weeks ago, but this motherboard has power buttons like this, a power and reset button that are on board. Make sure you check for that. Otherwise, if you want to test outside of your case, you may have to do something like taking your actual case's front panel, as you can see right here, and you can actually unscrew this segment of the case, bring it out, and it's actually a lot easier than it looks. And then you can just stick it right here and then use that to plug into the front panel header, and then use these on buttons to turn it on and off. But that's up to you. If you feel like it's too much of a hassle, then go ahead and test it in the case, but we're just warning you that if you do come across a problem, like there's I think like 10 or 11 screws on the motherboard, and there's tons of other things you'd have to undo and redo, and it's just nicer to do outside of the case if you can.
Alright, so next up we're going to be testing to see if this computer boots up nice and properly, and then we're going to be installing the rest of the stuff and eventually inside the case. Alright, see you guys.